Alright, we've covered the GK3s, and if you're thinking 3s, yeah, that's because there's two of them, not including this one, the so-called Pro. And that's what we're diving into today. It's mostly the same, slightly different, but those tiny changes do give us some surprisingly different results. So join me as we uncover why Pro is both the perfect name and possibly completely the wrong name for this machine. Hi, I'm Ross, and this is Fohammer Videos. Now, if this is your first time watching one of my GK3 reviews, welcome, but I'm not about to spend the next 20 minutes repeating everything I said in my GK3's review. You can watch that too, and I'd love it if you did because it goes into way more detail. And another view, like, and comment really helps the channel. But for now, I'm just going to give you a quick summary. So, with the GK3 range, and that's not including the larger Ultra, we've now got three nearly identical machines with only a couple of subtle differences. On the normal GK3s, the non-Pro versions that I covered in my last video, one has a ball screw, the other has a lead screw, also known as a T-screw. The difference between those and this Pro is that this has a ball screw as standard with no T-screw option, but more importantly, this Pro uses a 385nm light source where the standard uses a more common 405. In fact, this is one of only two printers I've ever had that uses 385, and I'll come on to show what that means later on. Continuing the summary for now, outside the lid design's decent, but there's a weird VOC leaking gap that shouldn't be there. USB port placement is smart, but recessed too far for some drives. I love the power button being moved to the front, but they hid it under a rotating plate. The build plate is still one of the best, great texture, solid locking, and no need for faffing with leveling, assuming you get yours pre-leveled. If you don't, really easy to do, and it'll never come unlevel again. The vat's big, though the resin pour spout makes pouring awkward. They fixed the build plate drip tray slot, kinda, but it's a bit of a bodge. The screen is 16K, 9.6 inches, not 10 as some brands claim. Great resolution, but limited UV penetration due to new panel trends. The real win of this whole range is that the screen replacement is stupidly easy, and that is a genuine selling point versus something like the Saturn or M7. And some standout features include a decent internal heater, a pre-built-in air filter with printable exhaust, and the auto resin system, which I personally won't use. It's also got a webcam and an app which finally lets you watch prints in real time. But then there's the UI, which is still basic, over-the-air updates don't work, and the multi-exposure test is basically useless in many scenarios. In the end, it's a printer that exists, it works great, it's got some great reasons to buy it, it's just not smarter than its competitors. In fact, it's genuinely dumber. But it is more convenient in some real ways. The build plate, the app, live webcam, and that replaceable screen specifically, they're standout features. And that's true of all of the GK3 machines apart from the Ultra, but what does this 385nm light source actually mean, and what does it do? Well, if I'm going to explain technical stuff, I need to do it in a medium that I am actually comfortable with. Crayons. Hopefully my editor can turn these scribbles into something halfway decent on screen, but for now, let's keep it simple. Not because you can't handle the detail, because this stuff is easier to get right when we strip it back. And if you've got better info or want to clarify something, please drop it in the comments. We're all figuring this stuff out together. So, when we talk about wavelength, the wavelength is just the distance between two peaks or two troughs in an energy wave. 385nm light has a shorter wavelength than 405nm, which means it squeezes more peaks and dips into the same distance. And my high school physics teacher, the absolute legend Mr. Gruel, once called this its jigability, and that stuck with me since I was 13. And why does this matter? Well, more jigability means 385nm light burns out faster. It carries more energy per photon, but it doesn't travel as far, so it doesn't penetrate as deep as 405nm. Alright, settle down. It's width that matters anyway, and I've got neither. And I've still got kids, so clearly it works, and that's what matters. Now yeah, that's a crude analogy, but it fits, and unfortunately it also lines up far too well with how I actually feel about the existence of this printer. But we'll come back to that in the conclusion. But the primary benefit of this change is one that we can clearly see when using transparent resins. The difference is visible, but again, only when using transparent resins. The more opaque the resin, the less this matters visually. So whilst it's technically doing something, that difference becomes less and less noticeable the more pigment your resin contains. Now, I need to mention that the normal GK3 uses PFA release film with its marketing name NFEB, but on the Pro you don't get PFA, it comes with CPFA, which if you want we should say stands for crap PFA, but it's just a marketing word that Uniformation have since admitted it's ACF. And they've explained that this is a newer ACF with a finer grain, but yeah, you still get the surface texture just like you would with ACF. And maybe that's not a huge issue for you if you're printing bigger models and you don't really need a perfect smooth surface, or if you're printing with transparents, because if you want that glass-like texture, you're going to need to clear coat them anyway. And I've got a separate video on that if you want to follow along and get glass-like results from any clear resin. But to really show off the difference in penetration depth, Uniformation have created several samples which have cavities within solid objects. So the idea is, with a reduced penetration distance, there'll be less bloating in the GK3 Pro printer, so we'll be able to see those internal structures because they won't be filled in by the UV light penetrating as deep. And yeah, you can see it. If you're specifically after something like this application in resin printing, that's the difference. Less bloating on transparent resins. And I need to stress again, this is only on transparent resins. The more opaque your resin is, the less of an impact this penetration depth will have. Now, to cover my arse, because I am still new to this, I will also say that there's an argument for resins cured with 385nm lights being tougher, but I expect that, just like the penetration depth, is a minimal amount. In my hands-on experience, I haven't noticed models printed in normal resins break any differently to ones printed on 405nm resins. And to be clear, all of this was done with the settings Uniformation told me to use. But I've also printed exposure tests on both machines, which are both balanced. I've got another video on balanced exposure, meaning perfect exposure, and why that's not great, but why this works. Again, check that. But this is enough to tell me that, yeah, I'll happily concur that the settings Uniformation provided are solid for what we're trying to achieve. But going back to the ACF release film you get on these printers and why Uniformation have advised that this is needed, apparently it's because the 385nm light source will actually make PFA brittle much quicker and could reduce its lifespan in upwards of 50%, and that's because of its increased jiggability. And I just haven't printed for long enough and don't have enough of these machines to actually test this, put it through its paces and verify it. But I also know I have another printer which has a 385nm light source, and that uses PFA release film. And I haven't changed the film on that in about a year or so since I got it. The printer keeps telling me to do so when it says it's run out, and I just keep lying to it and saying, I have, shut up. And that's why Skynet will come to hate us. But on that other printer with PFA film, I've come to my third round of release film ignorance, and it's still printing. But then, on the other hand, I also trust Uniformation wouldn't just make this up and promote something as a necessity on their machine when it'll be seen as a negative by so many people. And they know it will be, I've had that conversation. But that's it. Now, look, in summary, I am sure this is a great printer, and I even trust that 385 is a better light source in general terms. But the difference here is only really visible on transparent resins. Now, that's not a bad thing. Any incremental update is still an update. But the benefit also comes with a promoted drawback, and once again, I'll use the term apparently, it degrades the PFA film significantly faster, which is why they ship it with ACF instead. And that makes the whole endeavour feel like one step forward, one step back, and therefore we haven't actually moved. And we had the same thing when ACF came out. Yes, it's faster, but it reduces surface quality. And as many people have echoed now, people don't want ACF. They get resin printers for the best quality. If ACF reduces it, then that's not a thumbs up thing for the majority. And I have to say, and this has been widely debated as well, but in my experience, and I can only talk about my experience, I see it as a weaker material too, as in it's not as strong, it doesn't last as long. I've already had this one tear a small puncture in the time I've used it, which led me having to replace my screen protector. And I can promise you now, this isn't because I tried to start a print with loose cured resin in the vat. But yeah, here we're told we need to use ACF because 385 wears out PFA too fast. Again, we've gained more accurate transparent prints, but again, we've reduced surface quality, and that reduction in surface quality extends to everything else you print too, not just transparents. So this does one job really well, but it does other jobs worse. So if you're looking at getting this, I think there's two options. You can accept the surface quality issue and print away. Fantastic, thumbs up, crack on. Or you could replace the ACF with PFA and accept that you might need to replace your film more frequently. And if you do that, please let us know what it's like for you in terms of lifespan. Is it any better or worse than what you've seen before? Because I think we do need some community consensus on this topic, and we need more brands chiming in too. I want to be clear and say I haven't concluded my opinion on this light source yet. I just don't personally see a benefit for my use case, but I don't use transparent resins very often. And what I want is the smoothest surface quality possible so I can prime and paint my models immediately. So this is one I just want to put out to the audience. I'm not the gospel voice on this. My opinion is not everyone's. So more so than ever, I open the floor to you. Do you see the benefit here? Do you get more than what it takes? Will these benefits apply to you and why? Or do you feel like me that this is an upgrade, but with the drawback of release film that cancels out the benefit? I genuinely want you to tell me. But either way, I think it's the naming and approach to releasing this that I think is a huge misstep from Uniformation. I do think Pro is the best name for this device because, well, very specifically, I think it's mostly for manufacturing and prototyping professionals who will genuinely see a benefit in this light source. But I also see it as the worst name from a marketing standpoint because I think general everyday users will see Pro and immediately assume better than the non-Pro version and buy it without realizing that there are some drawbacks that need to be considered. Drawbacks that may not matter to you depending on what you're printing, but things that you should know about, specifically around surface quality and model scale. Now personally, I think all of them should have just been one product, the GK3, and let you choose 385, 405, T-screw or ball screw on a single product page, rather than making two, well, technically three separate products that likely just confuse people more than drive sales. But honestly, overall, I feel this is just the incorrect product for Uniformation to have pushed to YouTube creators, because I genuinely don't think that the people who would be tangibly getting the benefits out of this machine are watching YouTube hobbyist videos for their buying choices, and the majority probably aren't buying Uniformation printers in lieu of things that are much, much more expensive. But hey, I could be wrong. I often am. I was wrong about something 20 minutes ago, but I am married after all. In all seriousness, if you do fully understand the benefit of 385nm and specifically you've been looking at buying a more budget-friendly 385nm resin printers, please tell me why in the comments. But for now, I'm going to come back to my earlier analogy and just say, yeah, the normal GK3 doesn't penetrate as deep, but it works just fine. But if you do decide to buy this one, I'd expect it's because you want a GK3 thanks to the easily changeable screen, and the other two models are just out of stock. And if you do buy and this video has helped you at least expect what you're getting for your money, then I'd appreciate you using my affiliate links in the description before your purchase. That nets me a commission at no cost to you and is genuinely how I fully afford to run this channel, you know, by eating and staying alive. But above all else, I want to say thanks for watching. A like, a comment, or hitting subscribe goes a long way. And you could also join our members who are on screen now, who get early access, Discord roles, some exclusive videos, mostly of me waffling. But until next time, I could do something heroic, but I've just put a pizza in. Fohammer out.